Okay, so as Dr. Kessner said, my name is Gabby, and I'm so excited to be here because I have very vivid memories of Emma, V, and Kendall all visiting my computer science classes while I was at Marlborough, and it was always so exciting to hear what older girls were up to, and I hope that this is as exciting for you all as it was for me. So, as Dr. Kessner said, I graduated Marlborough last year and took computer science classes throughout and did an honors research project my senior year that was a data analysis of the North Carolina voter file to kind of look at disenfranchised efforts, specifically for traditionally marginalized communities in the state. And that was really, really amazing and really inspired the work that I ended up doing this year. So in the spring, partially due to the pandemic, but also due to the fact that I've always wanted to take a gap year, I decided to defer my admission to Brown and take a gap year. And as soon as I made that decision, I knew that I needed to spend the fall on the ground investing myself in the election. I have always been super interested in politics and have done kind of a lot of volunteer work and work adjacent to campaigns, but I wanted to be fully immersed in that. So long story short, I ended up on the data team of the Montana Democratic Coordinated Campaign, which is the campaign that's supporting Democrats all the way down the ballot in Montana from state legislature to Steve Bullock's Senate race, which is the most expensive race in Montana history and was one of the most competitive Senate races in the country. And within a week, I was packing up my bags and moving myself to Montana, which was something crazy and all happened very quickly. It was a job that most of the work was being done in SQL, which is a database language that I had barely any experience with, but I was told I would learn quickly. And so, yeah, that's how this happened. This is a picture of my team. As you can see, it is 3 men in their mid to late 20s and me, which was probably seems much crazier and harder than it actually was. I'm so grateful that I was working with some of like the kindest, best people, which is probably unusual. And I'm just like very, very grateful that I was able to work with people who had so much respect for me, not only as a woman, but as an 18-year-old who doesn't have a college degree yet or much experience. So I wanted to show you all just a little bit of the work that I did. A data team on a campaign really does so much, and it's hard to explain just because there is so much constantly changing needs and like so many people to support. And so kind of the main goals of our team were to support the people on the ground, which were our traditional field program that was organizing across the state, our Native Vote organizing team, which was organizing the 7 reservations in the state, which ended up having higher voter turnout than they have ever had in the past, and our voter protection team, which was a giant team of lawyers and volunteers who were protecting the right to vote for people across the state, specifically young people, first-time voters, college students, people in nursing homes, and they were doing really, really hard work, especially because we were in the midst of a pandemic. So we can start on the bottom left. This is a screenshot of our ticket leaderboard. So the way that our team worked was we had a ticket system where people across the state could send in a data ticket expressing like needs they had and asking for help with anything they needed help with. And we started this leaderboard as a joke, but it turned into a very, very competitive process of answering data tickets. And I joined the team about 3 months after everybody else and still managed to rise to second place. And so that was a very, very proud moment of mine. I ended like 3 before Ben, who was in first place, which was a little bit sad, but it's okay. in the middle on the bottom is a screenshot of a report that I created that was formed using a bunch of SQL queries that were loading into this Google Data Studio report. And this was sent every morning to every single down ballot campaign in the state with information about turnout. And this specific screenshot is showing turnout on reservations and college campuses. And so this was a really, really amazing project, and I was really proud of it. And the stakes were high because everybody was looking at it. So that was very exciting. And let's see, the bottom right is a really cool project I did using Python. And I learned a little bit of Python at Marlborough and had a lot of fun being able to apply that in Montana. And so basically our race modeling on the voter file was very bad, and we did not have a lot of coverage, especially for the Native communities in the state. And so this was a project that I started working on, basically trying to parse through last names of people in the voter file in order to better identify Native Americans in the state. And so I was using Python, as I said, and using regex, which is a way to work with sequences of characters to perform searches. And so that was really cool, something I've never done anything like before, and a very fun project. What else? The top right is a map that I created using Google My Maps and QGIS to keep track of which counties in the state were running mail elections and which were running in-person elections. There are 56 counties in the state. Each was doing something completely different. And so this was important for our voter protection team to be able to use and manage to keep track of all that information. And then these top two reports on the left were just examples of a bunch of analyses that I helped create to just support people and support our campaign leadership in any way that they needed. And so this was looking at what doors we needed to knock, our progress in terms of moving through our universes of people and calling through. And so that was another big part of my role, was managing our phones program and our text program to call through the entire state multiple times, text every single phone in the state, and knock on as many doors as we safely could during the world of COVID-19. And so that's just a few things that I worked on. Overall, it was really, really an incredible, crazy experience. Working on a campaign is something like no other job. You're working 13-hour days, 7 days a week, basically working with the same people every single day, and most of us knew no one else in the entire state. So it just becomes like a little family, and is very, very a special community to be a part of. People who just care so much about the work that they're doing, and like knowing that the stakes are so high, every single move you make has impacts for real like human beings. And so it was really just something that I couldn't ever have imagined doing as an 18-year-old, especially towards the end. During Get Out the Vote period, there's something called the boiler room, which is basically everyone in headquarters is locked down in this room. No one is allowed in or out, and you're managing the efforts of the entire state, managing the results that are coming in, and being like in that room as, again, like an 18-year-old was just like something that I could have never imagined. And I'm so grateful for Marlborough for kind of giving me the confidence and like self-respect and ability to have a work ethic that could allow me to like work that hard for that many hours while having so much fun and really not burning out. And so that's
all right. That's awesome, Gabby. Thank you so much.
Of course.
So that I mean, it's amazing just to see how much you've taken what you learned at Marlborough and brought it out into the world. So thank you for sharing that with us.
Of course.
I want to just before we take any questions, I know we're getting questions already, but I want to give everyone a chance to talk. So maybe just 5 minutes for Kendall and Emma and B, just to let everyone know so they can hear what you guys have been working on. And then maybe at like 12:30, we'll open up for questions and see what people want to ask you guys. So Kendall, you want to go up next?
Yeah, sure. Hi, everyone. I'm Kendall Lane, and I graduated in 2018. I'll just share, I guess, a little bit of what I've been doing since since I graduated. Well, I first took a computer science, like one of the first computer science classes offered in my freshman year, and I fell in love with it, and I was obsessed. And so I was like, this is what I'm going to do for college for sure. And then the summer after I graduated, well, my dad found this program that Google offered for incoming freshmen. And it was a 3-week intensive of just like 1 week we learned 4 languages, and then the next 2 weeks we had to create these huge projects. And so my group in that made this app that would send bus notification text messages, because just like to be helpful, and was using different APIs and stuff like that. And from there I guess I did well in that. So I automatically got an interview for an EP internship. And so my first summer at Google, I worked on a documentation generator. And so in New York City. And so they already had this internal system that would create documentation if you give it like certain code. And my partner and I worked to make it customizable. And so we gave the generator the ability to take in templates. And so then it would be able to be any design that you wanted to be. So that was the first summer. And then the second summer, which was last year, I did a virtual internship from home, and I worked on a monitoring dashboard for the Drive Takeout team, which is a product that you can use like if you're graduating from high school and you want to take all of your like data back with you before that account gets closed. That's the app that you would use. And so I put in a bunch of monitoring into their code so that they could figure out when it was working, what was like, what type of files and stuff were getting taken out of. And so I've got some interesting experience on like software engineering and like site reliability engineering. So yeah, I hope that's a quick summary.
Wow. So Kendall, you've been up to a lot of stuff.
Yeah, just a little.
So don't you go on Ivy? Don't you go to Cornell?
Yeah. Oh, I forgot. Sorry. Where I went to school. Yes, I go. Sorry, I'm a junior at Cornell, and I was lucky enough to go back onto campus this semester. So I just got home a few weeks ago and finished my quarantine. So I'm officially good and clear now.
Awesome. All right. How about Emma?
Sure. So hello, I'm Emma. I graduated Marlborough, same year as Kendall in 2018. We were in the same class. So at Marlborough, let's see, I was on the robotics team all through middle and high school. I've worked a lot on building the robot. Only during my senior year did I really start focusing mostly on coding. And like actually coding the robot, especially if you're on the robotics team. I worked on the autonomous program a lot, which you guys know is a rough time. But so yeah, that's kind of what I did. I took AP Computer Science my junior year, and I took the Special Projects course my senior year. And so during, I think AP Computer Science at Marlborough, I made like a bubble shooter game, a little buggy. And I look at the code now and I have no idea like what even makes sense, but it kind of worked and I was really proud of it. I still am. My senior year, my friends and I were getting major senioritis, so we were trying to figure out a project that would get us to show up to school every day, because we knew we needed to like show up to school to graduate. And so we ended up, Marlborough was gracious enough to give us a kind of ridiculous budget to make an art installation in the ARC, which I think you guys call like the CR something, I don't know, the library. So we made this like huge dome that like people could walk into, and it was dark. The teachers know what I'm talking about. But yeah, we made a whole art installation in the ARC, and so that was a ball. My portion was in a lot of Arduino stuff, so more lower level coding. It was pretty simple. It was just like like some lights and an accelerometer, but I learned how to solder. It was totally new. So that was really fun. So since Marlborough, after graduating, I am currently at Northeastern University in Boston. I'm a third year, but I'm in a 5-year program. So I'm like a junior. We call us like middlers, but basically a junior. And yeah, I'm majoring in computer science and music technology. So it's sort of like equal parts computer science major, equal parts music technology major. It's a whole thing. If you're interested in Northeastern, I can go more into it. But yeah, Northeastern has this really cool thing called a co-op program. And so instead of taking classes for like a semester, you instead like work full time for a company, almost like an internship or like a starting level position at the company. So you work full time for 6 months instead of like taking classes. And so if you're in computer science, you usually get paid, which is really nice. And it could help like fund college as well. So I completed my first co-op earlier this year. It was January through June full time, and I ended up extending my co-op part-time July and August while I was taking summer classes. So while on co-op, I worked at a company called Power Advocate. I'm sure none of you guys have heard of them, but they're like an energy consulting and technology company. I was a full stack developer, which basically means you work on all parts of the code. Back end is sort of, so like front end is sort of like how the website looks, you make the button appear, and then back end is like when you click the button, what do you do? And so making it do the things behind the scenes. So full stack means you do both. So that's what I did, which was a really cool experience to like get to work on like everything that a company was working on. It was a little overwhelming. The technologies I used on co-op are mostly React, JavaScript, and like a ton of databases. But in my computer science classes, I use Java, just like you guys learn, I think, in AP Computer Science. And processing, I think, is also in Java. So it all kind of carried over from high school, which was really nice when starting classes at Northeastern. But yeah, on co-op, I essentially worked on a budgeting app, kind of like Mint, if you guys have ever heard of that. It like categorizes your spending, but instead of it being for like a human that maybe spends like couple $1,000s a month, these are like energy companies that spend billions and trillions of dollars on like very specific energy things like transformers and wires and pipes. And so it kind of categorized these energy companies' spending. And yeah, I also got to do some software architecting while on that team, which kind of just means instead of physically coding, you like something like pre-coding, where you plan out what coding you're going to do in the future, and it's supposed to help you make better design decisions. It's supposed to make the coding go quicker once you actually start it. And that's usually a position and like a job that they reserve for experienced coders. Not saying I'm not experienced, but I'm definitely have only been coding for like 2-3 years at that point. 2 years, 2-3 years. So I felt very honored that they thought I could do it. I had a lot of help, but it was a really cool experience, and I feel like Marlborough definitely prepared me a lot, not just for how to code like in the computer science classes, but really prepared me for how to explain my code and how to like work with others while coding, because in like AP Computer Science and these other courses, they really encourage you to work with like your classmates, to work with even like you work with Dr. Kessner, Mr. Whitman, or whoever else is teaching the classes. You work with them a lot on your program. So I felt like they really helped with the more soft skills of computer science, which are sadly not taught as much in traditional college courses. So yeah, I actually am in January, I'm starting my second co-op at Vmware, which is a virtual machine company. Again, don't know if any of you guys have heard of it, but basically you take like your laptop or your computer, instead of it being physically there with you, you put it on the cloud and you access it through the internet. That's kind of what I'll be doing. So yeah, that's a bit about me.
Awesome. Emma, you've kept yourself busy too.
I really have. I was like writing down what I like was doing, and I'm like, wow, there's kind of a lot of stuff here, which is cool.
And I'll say, definitely don't sell yourself short on the software architecture. That's something that, as you know, we think about a lot when we're doing larger projects, and something we talked a lot about in terms of object-oriented programming and how to design software. So that's great that you're seeing that being put into practice. And
I remember doing a bit of that with you for my AP Computer Science project, trying to figure out how to get everything to work in the long run.
Yep, that's right. Awesome. All right. Well, how about B? Tell us what you've been up to.
Yeah. Okay. Hi, I'm B. I think I'm the oldest alum here. I was class of 2016. Hang on, I'm just messing with my Zoom settings. Okay, we're good.
Actually, if I could just interrupt before you start, B. B was in, I'm pretty sure you were in my first coding class.
I was in your first ever coding
also,
class.
B was in the first AP Computer Science class at Marlborough.
Yep.
And B and her mom were responsible for the name Code Violet for our coding
This is true. It makes me happy. I can only take credit for sort of starting the name, but it was really the students who came in the years after me that made it like fantastic and really what it is. So every time I've come back to Marlborough, I've just been amazed at at just like how it's expanded and grown. So it's so exciting to see the computer science program grow. But yeah, my name is Beatrix. I was class of 2016, I think I said that, at Marlborough. I am class 2020 from Vassar College, just graduated, so I almost said class 2020 because that's where I'm at now. Yeah, so I was in the first ever computer science class taught at Marlborough, I believe, first semester coding. It was my junior year of high school. I got into coding because sort of all throughout my the high school years at Marlborough, I was like, okay, am I a humanities kid or am I a STEM kid? Like, which do I pick? Which is more my vibe? But I also really liked the art classes I was taking. I was in film and digital art classes, doing a little bit of animating and stuff like that. And I really liked that too. So then once I saw that coding was being offered, I said, oh, let me try this. This seems like another way to be creative using a computer. And then I tried it and I was like, oh, this makes all areas of my brain light up at once. Because to me, it was like word math. So to me, it's fully at this intersection of humanities and sciences in a way that is just really applicable to a lot of things. So yeah, I saw a couple questions about like how people got into coding. And so that's always my answer, because I found something that made my brain light up. So then, yeah, I was in the first coding class. I loved it. And Dr. Kessner had passed on an opportunity to apply for the Code with Classie program, which was a summer program that has expanded a lot. And that it's sponsored by Carly Kloss, who's a supermodel, but also took classes at NYU in programming and decided that she really liked it and wanted to make it more accessible. So I was a student in that class. And then after I graduated high school, I was a TA for that class for 2 years. So that was a really, really valuable experience because I really found that I learned a lot by sort of coaching and teaching other people. And that solidified a lot of things. And that's how I got started doing sort of like web design stuff, was through that program. And so I thought that was, I really, really liked that. So I mentioned that I went to Vassar. I just graduated from Vassar, which is a small liberal arts college. And it's funny because I actually, when I was applying to colleges, it was a lot of tech schools, sort of a bunch of other stuff. Rensselaer Polytechnic, Rochester Institute of Technology, a couple other places like that I applied to. But when it came down to it, Vassar was just a better fit for me. And so it was sort of funny. I would go to people, would be like, oh, I'm at Vassar. They'd be like, oh, are you majoring in like film or art history? No, computer science, because it's not exactly what you expect. But this is, I think a couple of people have said this already. It really continued to enhance what Marlborough had started about soft skills and communication with computer science. So I'm really always happy to talk about liberal arts and science, because to me, it seems like a combination that some people are sort of hesitant about. But for me, it was really, really the right choice. It had a small community, and I really was able to work on my communication skills, which has been really important. So after my during my sophomore year of college, I went to the Grace Hopper Celebration for Women in Computing, which is a really incredible big conference. It was virtual this year, and I was able to attend it virtually, which was fun. But so that there's a big career fair, and that was sort of my first entrance into looking at how I could be professional, like professionally in the world of computer science. Because for so long, my answer had been, people said, what do you want to do? And I said, computer science. And now the next question was, what kind of computer science? And I was like, there's multiple kinds. So it was a really fun year of discovery for me, my sophomore year, taking a couple different classes. And I found that academically, I really liked sort of the theory side of it, sort of the logic side of it. But then sort of professionally and in internships and stuff like that, I tended more towards what Emma was talking about with the front end. So web design and human-computer interaction and user interfaces. So after my sophomore year, I had my first internship. It was at a company in San Diego called Viasat, where I helped them build a sort of data monitoring dashboard. And I basically built the entire website visual part of that. That was an incredible experience. I gained a lot of confidence. And it was really, really cool just to get out there into the tech world and see what was going on. So then after that, I did a semester abroad at the University of Edinburgh in Scotland, which I want to mention because it's sort of a counterpoint to the liberal arts college point, because I was able to take a semester to be at sort of a bigger, more traditional research institution. They have a pretty well-known informatics program. And I was like, this is cool, but I like liberal arts. So then I was really happy when I came back to Vassar and got to be in my little computer science community again. But it was while in Edinburgh that I interviewed for my internship after my junior year, where I interned at LinkedIn. And that was a really incredible experience to be in the Bay Area, in sort of like Silicon Valley, at a bigger tech company. And this relates to Emma. I want to say the architecture is so important, because being at a bigger company where there's a huge code base, it is so important. And also what Kendall was talking about with documentation, there's so many different engineers working on every project. It is important for you to be able to communicate and see what other people are doing and how to use different components of the code. And that brings me to where I am today, which is I started full-time at LinkedIn in July. I'm having a great time so far, even though I'm remote. I'm hoping to move up to the Bay Area soon. I'm in LA right now with my family. But yes, I'm currently, both my internship at LinkedIn and my current position are specifically a user interface engineer. And I find that to be really, really satisfying, really satisfying, because I feel like it brings up what I initially loved about coding, which is that it's this very multidisciplinary thing and it has this very artistic element, and yet you're trying to find the best way to put the logic behind that so that the system works smoothly. It's the best kind of problem solving, and I'm absolutely happy to talk about any aspect of that further.
All right. Awesome. B, it's great to hear everything that you've done also. All four of you. Really amazing to hear everything that you've taken on. I have a first question actually that came from the chat. How many of you had prior coding experience before you got to Marlborough? Okay, I see 4 shaking heads.
Yeah, I think, so my parents are both engineers, so neither of them coded, but they were very like technical, and whenever I expressed interest in anything, they were like, yeah, let her do it. So I went to like some science camps, and basic like flow chart, like scratch type coding things, I had done very basic stuff, but the first time I coded like linear code, like with a keyboard, was definitely at Marlborough. I think on the robotics team.
Right. Okay, so good. Here's a follow-up question that also came from the chat then is, so what would you say to students who maybe don't have, who maybe are not so interested in math, but maybe they think coding might be something interesting for them? Do you think what would you say to them?
Any of us, or Emma specifically?
Any of you.
I can definitely hop into that, because I had really low confidence with math before I came to Marlborough, and being at Marlborough helped, but I still just had low confidence. And so I never thought that I was somebody who could really get into, I guess, the theoretical side of things. But that was something that I discovered both at Marlborough and then later at college, is that the thing, to me, computer science is really about the logic of it. So it's kind of like, it's math, but it doesn't necessarily focus as much on the arithmetic. So if certain things about math intimidate you, it can sort of give you the same satisfaction of problem solving without some of the things that are really intimidating. And also the good thing about programming is that there's always ways to get your program to do the math for you. So as long as you know what you're trying to do, you can automate it. And that's really exciting and cool. I once heard somebody say that the best programmers are really lazy because they want their program to do everything for them. So it means that they figure out a way to program it. But so just sort of like back to the question in general, I definitely did not have very much math confidence. And I think programming increased my math confidence because it gave me the logical foundation. I remember being in AP computer science and being in AP statistics at the same time, a class that I wasn't sure if I should take, and also AP calculus. And so I ended up in 3 sort of mathy AP classes in my senior year at Marlborough. And I remember being in statistics and being like, oh my gosh, this is like that thing that I did in AP computer science the other day. And then being in calculus and being like, oh my gosh, that's interesting. I wonder how I would graph that with using code or something like that. So I think they can, I really feel like even though programming is sometimes seen as really mathy, it's definitely not a prerequisite. And I think programming can help with the kind of logical and problem solving confidence behind math, if that makes sense. I'd love to hear other alums' experience if they have.
Yeah, I'd love to hear from the rest of you actually on this one too.
Yeah, I think B, you said it so well. It was like, so for me, I was a mathy person. And then when I got to college, I realized that I didn't like theoretical math, and that wasn't for me. And so I had this realization that what I loved about math was the problem solving and figuring out the solution and kind of the puzzle of it. And so I was like, okay, now I'm so glad that I found coding, because that's really what's so fun about it, is like every problem, every function, everything is a puzzle, and just trying to make that puzzle work and work together. And so I feel like, and yeah, as B said, it's a math thing, but it's not like, you don't need all of the math concepts. It's kind of the skills that you use to like solve math problems are similar to the skills that you need to solve coding problems. So if math isn't your thing, I think coding is a great other option if you're still into STEMmy type things.
I mean,
Right, and Gabby, do you want to add anything to?
yeah, you should go.
Sure. I honestly agree with everything that everyone has already said, but I do think that I personally, in my computer science classes, was usually a year behind math-wise, in comparison to like the people I was in computer science classes with. And I don't think that had any big effect on the work that I was doing, but I do think that those 2 disciplines obviously do interact, and like it can be very, very interesting to explore the things that you're learning in your math classes, in your computer science classes. But I also think that there's so much you can do that is just like doesn't require very intense math abilities, and so I don't think that should be a limiting factor for anybody in deciding to take a computer science class.
Can I add another thought I had really quickly?
Of course.
It's just, to me, the places where I've run into the most math and programming is with video games and interactive stuff. There's a lot of math in college. I had some friends who were doing video games, and they needed to do like trigonometry for particle effects and stuff like that. And so I remember being intimidated by that, but then it's a really visual way to see these math concepts illustrated very quickly. And so I think that that's one way to think about math for me, is it makes it sort of more visual depending on the kind of programming you're doing, if that makes sense.
Yeah, at Marlborough, I was super into math. For a while, I was thinking I should major in it. But after my senior year, I decided I wanted to major in computer science, went to college for computer science. And I have yet to really take a math course. Because I took AP computer science at Marlborough, I tested out of math, my like only math requirement at Northeastern. So yeah, you can not like math at all and do perfectly fine. I think the logic of math and like, I think of it as like, if you're really good at following a recipe, you'll be very good at coding if you think that kind of way. Or you can even learn to think that kind of way. But kind of like how math is like, you follow a certain set of steps and you apply those steps to different things in a similar way. I feel like that's kind of what coding is. So you don't really have to be good at math to be good at computer science, but those skills do transfer if you are good at math.
All right. I saw we have a lot of my students from AP Computer Science and Computer Science projects came in. We actually, I guess we have started class officially. But I wanted to see if any of you guys have questions for them, especially as you're going through either AP Computer Science or you're getting ready to graduate. If you have a question, you can go ahead and put it in chat, or you can just unmute yourself at some point. But actually, I had one follow-up question. So while you guys are thinking about questions, maybe here's a follow-up question, or maybe just something about your college experience. Was there anything surprising and about when you got to college, about the classes, studying computer science, or what was the biggest change maybe from what you've been doing, what you're doing at Marlborough?
Yeah, can I answer this first? So the biggest change, which might sound just like kind of oblivious, was that every coding group I ever had was all girls. And so when I got to college, I was like, I knew it was going to be predominantly my male peers and stuff, but you don't realize till you sit in the lecture hall, and it's like at my school, it's like 1,000-person lecture hall, and there's probably like 100 girls, and it's like crazy. You're like, oh my goodness, this is it. Like, and then also on top of that, there's not many people of color in the room either, so that's also very intimidating. And also at Marlborough, like working with the other girls, it was always so collaborative, and everyone would listen to each other's ideas. And I had never like experienced talking and no one hearing what I was saying. And my male peers also have the tendency to just like say things even when they're not right. And so it's like, I'll ask them a question. I'll be like, oh, like, do you understand what this is? And they're like, no, but I know this. And I'm like, oh, but that's about what I was asking. So it was getting used to like how to like go, like how to interact with my male peers and thrive in that environment. But I don't regret going to all girls school at all, because I would have not had the confidence to do that. I think I would have been very intimidated and very just like quiet and stay in the corner. But I was like, no, you need to listen to what I'm saying, because I know what I'm talking about as well too. So that was a little thing to adapt to.
I can speak to that a little bit. Vassar is a historically women's college, but it went co-ed in the 60s. But so there's still a sort of lingering more female students at the school because of its traditional reputation. So I was in, like Kendall said, all girl environments for a long time. And then I got to my college where the ratio is not quite 50-50, but it's not too far off from being even gender spread in the class. And then for my first internship, I remember having a moment at orientation where I was standing around and I was like, there's a lot of men in this room. There's a lot of men in tech, huh? Maybe they weren't kidding. And so it sounds ridiculous, but it was really a funny moment for me. And I definitely think that having years of experience at Marlborough and elsewhere, but starting at Marlborough for sure, where being in the room, like Kendall said, it's collaborative. You're not thinking about the fact that you're a woman in tech because everybody else around you is also ostensibly a woman in tech. So to me, having that basis where I could really be vulnerable and learn without being self-conscious about representing women as dumb or something, that was really important to me, so that by the time I got to an internship team, and it was, I remember on my internship team, there was a male coworker who, Kendall said, sometimes would just kind of talk, even though he wasn't necessarily correct. He'd be like, no, because I'm building the front end and this is how this needs to be structured. So it just gives you sort of more assurance in your abilities and in your understanding, and also how to communicate and explain things. So that was building off of Kendall's answer. And sort of to the original question, I think for me, it was sort of learning to look at computer science from a more theoretical level. That just happened to be the curriculum that I was stepping into. I think anytime you step into a new curriculum at a different institution, it's going to be a little different. So that was an adjustment for me. It was sort of like expanding beyond the code while also being happy that I had had experience looking at the code. So that when we were coding up examples, I was like, oh yeah, I've done the Fibonacci sequence before. I knew that in this language, sure thing. So that's sort of my answer, is adapting to sort of the more theoretical framework, and like Kendall said, just really coming into your confidence as a woman in tech.
Thank you, V. There's a great follow-up question in the chat. So for any of you four, did your participation in computer science open up your mind or vision up to other possible career college majors or career goals for your future?
I can take this one. So I mentioned it before, but I'm doing what's called a combined major. So its curriculum is very focused on the interdisciplinary aspects of computer science. So they actually keep their curriculum very theoretical because they want you to be able to apply it to many disciplines. And so the majority of computer science students at Northeastern, I believe, are combined with like biology or math or physics or music technology, like me, or we have like 20 of them or something. But I think, especially at Marlborough, we were really encouraged, especially in my senior like special projects course, to use coding on something else that you were interested in. So for my friends and I, our senior year, it was art and music and kind of how we could create this installation to be this really fun experience. At Northeastern, it's been much more focused on the music tech degree and the CS degree are a bit more segmented, but I definitely still bridge that gap a lot, seeing like, oh, like how can I code something that like produce harmonies that I really want, or just kind of like seeing music from a much more technical perspective and seeing computer science from a much more creative and like people oriented perspective, and like I think like B mentioned like the human computer interaction part of it. So it's like, how can I use this to help others in some way? How can I use my like computer science skills to like solve a problem that I see, rather than just like coding for the sake of coding. So I think it's opened up my mind in ways that I was already interested in, which I think was really cool. I think I got into computer science because it helped me like do things that weren't computer science related at all.
I can speak a little bit to this as well. I think that at Marlborough, we did so many incredible like interdisciplinary projects in our computer science classes. I know my class worked with Children's Hospital to create a CPR app and worked with the dancers to create projections for the dance concerts. And my year during honors research, a lot of people really created their own interdisciplinary projects and used their coding skills to kind of apply to other disciplines that they really enjoyed. And so I think that something important that I've learned is that every single field needs people who code. And it's very rare in most fields to have the skills of, like, for example, in politics, like being able to work with people and understanding the needs of organizers and understanding like grassroots work, but also having data skills or computer science skills. And so I think if you have anything that you care about, like just knowing that you can use your code in that field and probably be a very unique person by being able to do that.
Yeah, no, that's a great point, Gabby. That's something that I really appreciate about computer science, is that you can apply it to math or science or the arts, visual or performing arts, or even current humanities and social science research. There's a lot of researchers nowadays that are doing things with looking at historical records and converting those to digital, and then running programs on that to analyze their data, historical data. So there's all sorts of applications of computer science. So it's great that you guys are kind of exploring all the different ways you can take it. Here's a fun question. Have any of you programmed or helped program a video game at any point in time? This is from Sarah in the chat.
I want to jump in a little bit here because I think that some of y'all, Emma, was it you that mentioned a bubble game? Somebody mentioned a bubble game.
Yeah, that was my APCS project.
For my APCS project, I was working with my friend Alana, who I adore, and I have to say that every time I mention her, she was also a Marlborough alum. And so we were in APCS, and we wanted to build sort of like a rhythm game, like Dance Dance Revolution or Guitar Hero, more like, where you use the keyboard. And so that was sort of my first time. It taught me some really interesting things about like how computer science, how fast your code compiles can affect how smoothly your program runs, in terms of, because we were trying to time it to music. So that it was a little bit different every time we started it up. And then I think one of my earlier games was I made Brick Breaker. which was really, really fun. And that taught me a lot about sort of math and collision detection and stuff like that. It's really, really, really fun. But I fondly remember the game that I made with Alana and APCS as one of my favorite projects ever. It was just really, really fun to work on, and it taught me a lot. So I wanted to jump in because I love that memory.
My final project of my freshman fall class was to make Space Invaders, and it was really cool, but it was really intimidating. They just gave us the empty files and they're like, you've learned enough to make Space Invaders, so do it. And it was crazy, like matching the sounds, like B was saying, it's a whole thing of just like stress trying to get that to work, and all the collision detection. So like when you shoot a beam from the spaceship, you have to make sure the right alien goes away and it doesn't affect, and everything still moves. So it was a lot, but I did learn so much from it because there's so many different aspects of programming that goes into making a game. It was really rewarding after I finished it.
Yeah, well, I feel like computer science courses, especially intro computer science courses, love to make their final project to be code a game. So I think I've made, at this point, Minesweeper, and I've made like a Christmas tree light up kind of thing where you like rotate puzzle pieces and you try to get them all to connect to light up all the lights. So those are really fun. I'm very glad I had those experiences, but because it was for a class and it was graded, it was very stressful. I think I kind of like what Kendall said. They're like, oh, like we taught you all the things. Here's what it should look like at the end. Here's like maybe 2 starter files to like help you figure out what's going on. Have fun. And you're like, oh my goodness. But the end result is really cool. And I think coding a game is really great because you get to like have an end result that like your friends who don't code know exactly what's happening. And they can recognize, like my parents can recognize like, whoa, like Emma did a really cool thing, even though like my dad doesn't know how to code. My mom hasn't coded in like 20 years. So yeah, I feel like if you end up doing computer science in college, you'll definitely make quite a few games. Or you can major in like game design, and then you could make like legit games that have a whole storyline.
There's a lot of like game making groups in college. I can also mention I had some friends who I mostly watched them make this game because there was a lot of physics involved. But there's definitely groups that just like extracurricular, even at schools that don't have game design programs, where you can just sort of like fiddle around with it, because I think like everybody's saying it's a really good way to learn.
Hey, Isabel, did you have a question?
Yeah, I actually have a question for Gabby. So what was the actual process of you getting the job in Montana? Like, how did that work? And then how prepared did you feel to do all of that coding 13 hours a day?
Yes. So would you mind repeating the beginning of your question? I think you cut out a little bit.
Oh, sorry. How did you get the job in Montana? Like, did you have to reach out to them, or did you consult other people or something?
So as soon as I realized that I wanted to be working on a campaign, I honestly just started reaching out to people I know in politics, people I don't know, cold emailing people, and then it took a lot of time, but it came together. And so it was a difficult path, but I do recommend, if there's something that you want to do, just do everything you can in your power to like find people who will help you make it happen, because there are people who want you to like succeed and do the things that you like love and want to do. So I think keep reaching out to people, and at some point it'll work out. That's my advice. And then was the second part of your question, how did I feel prepared to do the work? Okay. I think that working in such a fast-paced environment allowed me to learn really quickly. I think a part of it was that I didn't have an option to not figure it out. So even when something was really hard or really difficult, like I needed to figure it out, whether that be asking a lot of questions or trying a new way to understand a concept. Like being in a high pressure environment that was also not stressful, but like still high pressure, really pushed me forward in ways that I couldn't have imagined. And I think that's why I was able to gain so many skills so quickly. But overall, I think that what a lot of people on this panel mentioned, like the soft skills that you learn at Marlborough, and I think that that was really important to me because it was a completely different language and completely different concepts, but I still had the ability to like take in these skills very quickly. So those are my thoughts.
Great question, Isabel. Are there any other questions from students or prospective students? A question from the chat: do the older computer science students help and mentor their younger peers? And yes, that is absolutely the case. In fact, something that's really fun this year is that our Code Violet students. So our Code Violet is run by 4 very motivated students this year. They were all 4 of them 9th graders in AP Computer Science last year, and they are running the club this year. They what they did this year is they started a Discord server, and they're answering coding questions for all of this year's AP Computer Science students. So they started that on their own.
That's so wonderful. I just have to interject and say that's so wonderful.
Yeah, no, it was it's super cool. Yes, there's absolutely a lot of mentoring that goes on, both in all the classes. So as soon as someone understands something, we encourage students to help each other. We encourage a lot of collaboration on projects. For things like the computer science projects course, we have students who have been in there multiple years also, so they can help students get up to speed on certain things that we're doing. In robotics, there's a lot of mentoring that happens. You know, students come into robotics teams in 7th grade, and the older students bring them in and they mentor them in everything from coding to engineering to CAD. So yeah, there's all sorts of great mentoring that's happening here in the STEM program. All right, well, it looks like we're at 1 o'clock. So and that's what we had scheduled. So I wanted to thank you, all 4 of you alumni, for spending your time to talk to us. It's great to hear everything that you guys have been doing, and just you know, that you're still enjoying coding. But what we really appreciate is that you're coming back here to share your experience and to try to inspire the next generation of coders. So thank you very much.
Very happy to be here. Also, I think there's a LinkedIn group for Marlborough STEM. Is that right? I think that's still.
There is still a group, a LinkedIn Marlborough group. I have not had my students do that yet this year, so but we will definitely connect on that.
I work at LinkedIn, so I will say connect with me on LinkedIn. It's a good way to connect and network. It really is.
Yes, absolutely.
If anyone, this probably applies to all of us, but if anyone has any questions or ever wants to talk about anything, like, you can always feel free to reach out.
Absolutely.
That's great. Thank you, Gabby. So that's it for the meeting today. If the alumni, if you could just hold on for a few minutes, and my AP students, if you could, and computer science students, if you could hold on for a few minutes, then after the meeting, then that'd be great. But otherwise, thank you everyone for joining us, and good luck for all you prospective families in the process. And for any current students, hopefully this has inspired you to do a little more coding. Thank you, everyone.